Hey there, I'm Daryl Olson and Jackson Fishing Team, and and a bunch of other good stuff. But anyway, we're gonna tie up a crease fly. This is more or less for me for practice for at 843 flies, where I'll be tying this fly on next Wednesday night, and that's their fly tying night. So if you want to tie this fly, you can show up at 7 at 843 flies. Anyway, let's take a look at it and get started. This fly will be tying up in several stages, so
well, this here is the partial process. It involves a little fly tying and then maybe quite a bit more artsy stuff or gluing. Anyway, let's get into this, and you'll be seeing that we'll be tying this in stages. On there, let's turn up some lights. The hook that I'm going to use is a Kona Universal Strong Streamer in a size 1. You can tie this up to like a 1/0 or 2/0 if you want. And I'm going to go ahead and debarb this, and I usually use a pair of pliers instead of my vise. On there. The first piece of material we're going to tie on is going to be our thread. And I'm using Ultra Thread 210 denier in white because the color is not that important. And we're going to start right back behind the eye of the hook. And we're going to take this back to the point of the hook. And this is where we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a white bucktail on there. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to take a few of these small fibers. Don't need a lot, just like tying a clouser. Less is more. It'll give us a little bit of action. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to clean out some of that under fur and that. And I'm going to do is I'm going to just hand stack it. You could do a hair stacker. On there. That looks pretty good there. And I'm just going to even up the ends here because I'm going to use this full length. And we're going to just use some loose wraps for now to keep it on top of the hook. This hair, since it's so far down to the base of that bucktail, it'll flare. And that's okay because normally we're not using that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of put some wraps underneath here because I want to keep this tail lifted up, and I'm going to wrap at least a couple times around, kind of like like your post on a parachute dry fly. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep those colors, the materials separated, and this helps me do that, so I'm not blending any colors in there. Next I'm going to use is some Saltwater Flashabou in extra wide, or whatever you want to use. It's in pearl, and I'm only needing one strand. And if you look at that bucktail, you can see what I mean by it. It's going to flare a little bit. And that's only because we've taken it at the bottom end of that tail. And we're just going to trim this right back past those tips. Next we're going to do is we're going to use some of this brown of that white tail. And you want to just get just a little bit. You don't want a whole lot. And cut this more up towards the center on there, so that way it's going to be roughly the same length, because it has a tendency to be a little shorter. A little bit shorter, and we're going to separate that as well. We want to make sure we have a good amount of thread on here for the next step. And we're going to go ahead and whip finish that. All right. Now we get to the crafty part, and I cut up some squares on there, which kind of look like which will look, or rectangles, using 2mm foam in white. And what I did was I made sure that the width is two hook gaps, and then the length was just just past that, but we're probably going to trim that a little bit. And I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of measure that, and where that point is, I'm going to end up cutting a triangle. So it kind of looks like this here. And I'm going to fold it in half. And now I'm going to measure it to see really what I need to do here. And I think I'm going to take a little bit more off, about that much. And then I'm going to cut like a little notch here at the end. So I've got a little thing there. And I'm going to take some UV gel. You can use whatever type, or not UV gel, super glue. And the gel gives it a little slow drying compared to, let's say, the liquid type. And this gives me a chance to maybe play with it a little bit. And I'm not going to want to put it all the way down. I'm just going to want to hold it here for a bit. I'm going to take one of these clamps here to hold that down and let that dry for a bit. And then take my scissors here. I'm going to cut at an angle here, these little tabs. And I'm going to apply a little bit more. Super glue there. And then we'll clamp that down some more. We'll remove that clamp. That's pretty good right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this tail up and apply a little bit of super glue in that area right there. And just hold that down tight. that's it. We'll let them dry a little bit longer, and then we'll go on to the next step, and that's going to be using a little razor blade, trim up some of this to make it look a little neater, and on there I think I take a little cut right here yet. Open that up a little bit more. Yeah. All right, we'll be back. The next process is we're going to try to clean up these flies. Make sure that the seams are a little even in there. Yeah, be careful not to cut yourself or whatever there. On that part. All right, now when you cleaned it up somewhat, we're gonna color it, and all I'm gonna do is you can use Sharpies. I like using Copic markers. In this case, this is brown or copper, and what we're gonna do is I'm gonna and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's bait fish or whatever, they've got a dark back to them. And that looks pretty good there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one out, try not to touch that, and let that dry, and we're going to do another one on there. and take that one out. Next we're going to add is some red gills. That looks terrible. And then we're going to give it some red lips here. Maybe some little bit of red on the inside on there. Let's see if we can do a better job on the next one. And there's our red lips on there. Let me see if I can do this a little bit better freehand, like without being on the vise. That seems to be a little bit easier. That seemed to be easier. Maybe you just need to take it out of the vise, let them dry. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to put a little glitter on these since they might have dried enough. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some UV Flex formula, and that'll keep it where, you know, this is still flexible. So when the fish bites it, he doesn't have a hard head or something like that. So I'm just going to put a little bit on here. And then I'm going to sprinkle some really fine glitter on this thing here. I don't know if you can see the glitter there now. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit with this brush. And I might have to do this several times for the different bodies. So I'm going to lay this down here, and we're going to paint this. And I probably should have let it dry a little bit longer. I thought maybe the I'm going to have to let that stuff dry just a shade longer, but I'm committed here now with this one. And I'll need to find my UV light. Yep, that's all right. First time doing this, so the concept's good. All right, we let these dry a little bit longer, but then I forgot to put eyes on, and I'm going to put, using these folding mill eyes. They're flat ones. They're sticks. They're not 3D, and they're fluorescent red with a black dot. You know, I'd like to use the 3D ones, but you know, these are kind of fun. And maybe you don't need to put eyes on them. The fish is going to react to the popping action on there. All right, and earlier we had talked a little bit about on this glitter stuff. I think I need to put a little bit more UV resin on there. I'm going to try to paint all these in. And where's my glitter? Let's see if these are dried enough. Yeah, I think I gotta let them dry a little bit longer, but that's all right. This is all an experiment when you come into tying. So I'm gonna let them dry a little bit longer. I thought I let them dry a good amount of time, but I don't know. Can you see that glitter? I don't know. I can see it when I'm looking at it, like little scales. So we'll pause this and we'll check it out a little bit later. Some holding mill eyes, and these are 6 millimeters, maybe about 1/4 of an inch, and they're flat eyes. On there. All right. And then of course we got our mixture of UV glue. I need to put a little bit more on here. And on some glitter. On there, so we'll brush that on. And you can use other types of flexible glue. It doesn't have to be UV. There's soft tack and again, I think I still needed these to dry a little bit longer, but I think you get the idea. I think maybe next time I'll have to dry them overnight, maybe. Or maybe a Sharpie would dry faster than the Copic. Then we're going to put a second coat on, not using the same brush. And it'll be just maybe to cover over this. And using a separate, different little brush, so I don't, or I guess you could use the same one, but I don't know. I'm using two different brushes. And then my UV light. And if you don't use a flex cement, use thin or whatever, but it's actually going to still be hard. So if you would push down on that foam, you know, like that, it'll probably crack. So, and it's a little tacky, I think. You know, I could probably add some whatever that tack-free type UV, but I'm not sure if that would be too hard. Anyway, there it is. That's the fly we'll be tying on next Wednesday night at 7 at 843 Flies. All right.
All right. 843 Flies. My contribution will be teaching how to tie up one of these crease flies, and if you need to look again, it'll be right here on YouTube for you to check out and do. All right. We'll see you on the water.